Now, I want to share with you a few tidbits. I'm a little bit oppressed and running into persecution problems by people that when you tell them the truth of what the Quran says, and you tell them the truth about the movements of the Arabs and the persecution that right now that we're seeing, such as the slitting of the throats of Christians in Egypt and the persecution of Christians in Saudi Arabia and other places, we run into problems because here in America, we don't want to acknowledge the fact that we have misjudged and our cultural propensity toward freedom for everyone and openness for everyone, it's starting to backfire. It's starting to prove very dangerous. And so we're having, for example, Sharia law is being adopted in some places in Texas or Oklahoma, and it's nonsense if people obviously are not reading the Quran and are not paying attention to what Sharia law says. They make a mistake. And the reason is this: when the president and different people say that Islam is a religion of peace, a religion of love, it means that they generally have not really read the Quran, or they choose not to tell the truth. What we have to understand is that that peace and love of the Quran is being issued forth to Muslims, and only to Muslims, because non-believers, one, are to be taken by force any way that you can. And when you are strong enough and large enough, you are to cut off their hands or their necks, if they don't choose to convert. And that it goes for Muslims who are not following the Quran eye for eye, note for note. The other problem is, how can we say this, but I'll just tell it like it is. The Quran is very clear that yes, you give peace and love to other Muslims who are believers, but to non-believers, not only are you free to kill them when you're more powerful than them, but it is also very clear in the Quran, spelled out very clearly, that Jews and Gentiles that refuse to convert are either to be thrown into slavery or they are to be killed. And then the third condition that they're to be exposed to, and this is actively still practiced in Muslim nations, they're to pay a 3 to 4% tax just because they're a non-believer. So you either throw them into slavery or you highly tax them. The other thing that we need to know is that under Sharia law, a non-believer in court really cannot, his testimony cannot outweigh that of a Muslim. So we have to understand, if an American state accepts Sharia law, then it would mean that any Jew or Gentile who has a court case against an Arab, a Muslim Arab, or a Muslim, whether he's Arab or not, American, whatever, your testimony is invalid. It takes the witness and the testimony of 2 or more women to equal that of a Muslim man, if those women are Muslim. In addition to that, homosexuals are to be killed. And in addition to that, the rights of Gentiles and the rights of Jews, they become second-class citizens. I wonder, amazingly, how can you say our love of freedom, we should extend freedom to people that if we recognize their law and their culture and bring it here, we then, as Americans, will become second-class citizens, subject to death, subject to imprisonment, subject to paying higher taxes. This is confusing, very confusing to me, and I know what the problem is. The problem is we love freedom and all of this so much that the people don't realize that if you give freedom and allow Islam to become an active faith in this country, you will lose your rights. And here's the proof of it. When you look at Germany, Belgium, France, and all the other European nations that have allowed an influx of immigrants from Arab nations that are Muslim, they are now not only regretting and trying to close the door, but they're faced with a major problem called demography. because of these liberal immigration problems and thinking these people are going to get here, they will assimilate with us, they will then become Germans, they will become Americans, they will become Canadians, they will become Belgians, so on and so on. That was a mistake. The German government spent billions of dollars trying to reach the Islamic communities and try to incorporate and build them in. All those programs have failed. They've wasted billions of dollars because the culture of the Arabic nations and the Arabic people that are Muslim, they stay together, they stay isolated, they do not conform, they feel superior by the mandates of the Quran and so forth. So it's not happening. There is no mutual agreement and integration. And we have to be careful and examine this. But Europe is ahead of us, and they have a problem. Americans and Europeans maintain a birth rate, a demographic birth rate of 1 to 1.4. In other words, we're having less than 2 children a family. Now, that is a problem because Muslims are having 4 to 8 children per family. So the population growth is growing greater. Now, Israel is concerned about it. Why? Because we have this fallacious thinking that and I've heard people say it, that Israel, the Israeli government is practicing apartheid, that there are no Muslims in the country. How could that be when under this election, the third strongest political party was an Arab party? In other words, the democratic form of government that Israel has is, if you want to live in Israel and participate, whether you are Jew, Gentile, or Muslim, you can. But what has the opponents and the enemies of Israel sold us? They have sold us a picture that there are no Arabs involved in the Israeli government on any level. That is not the case. There are mayors of different communities that are Arab, and there are mayors that are Muslim. There are participants in this election. The third strongest party is Arab. And we have to come to grips with our understanding of Israel. And the simple thing is, Israelis are, like Europeans, having barely 2 children per family, and the Arabs are having 4 to 8 children per family, which means that by the year 225, Europe and the United States, we will be in a serious problem, because all the statistics show that when an Arab Muslim population gets close to 30%, they overthrow, and reverse the culture and the government that is in place. My goodness, that's good news if we're aware of it and then we act accordingly. It's bad news if we're unaware and we throw open the floodgates to people that when they get in power will not allow us to vote, will not allow us to participate. Then we're going to have problems. Now, some of you would want to invalidate my testimony and this information, but the reality is I've probably been to Israel more times than you. And in Israel, in Jerusalem, I stayed in Palestinian hotels many times, and I had bus drivers, and my bus company was run by Palestinians right in Jerusalem. And you say, why would you do that? I did it for protection. If I'm taking a group of Christians to tour Israel, I want them to be safe. So rent a Palestinian bus company with a Palestinian bus driver. You have a better chance of not having rocks and bricks thrown at you by angry Palestinians, which we did. But also it gave me opportunity to spend weeks and weeks in time with Muslim bus drivers. So I was able to find out where they live, where they were historically from, and what was going on. This information can help you broaden your understanding, but also to get prepared for what's coming. I want to recommend a book to you, and I don't know if you can even get a copy, but back in the 70s when I was discussing this and looking into it, because I was watching Islam grow in the Afro-American community, and I realized I didn't know enough about it. I came upon this book by Robert Morey, and the book is entitled Islamic Invasion, Confronting the World's Growing Religion of Islam. There's some amazing stuff in here, but what I want to do is read something to you that as an Afro-American knocked me out. According to the literal Arabic translation in Surah 3, 106 and 107, on Judgment Day, only people with white faces will be saved. People with black faces will be damned. Is not this racism? As Victor and Deborah Kiley point out in their article on Islam, American blacks have been widely wooed by Islam, but through misinformation. They hear that Christianity is a white man's religion. Islam is the religion of all mankind. They are told that Allah and Muhammad are black. But in reality, Muslims in the Middle East still regard blacks, you watch this, as slaves. It would be worse than blasphemy for them to believe that either Allah or Muhammad were black. It must also be pointed out that Arab Muslims were enslaving black Africans long before Westerners got involved. So we need to understand that. And then one other point from the Quran in Surah 2, Surah 4, Surah 11, and Surah 47, the Quran promises a heaven full of wine and free sex. If drunkenness and gross immorality is sinful on earth, how can it be right in paradise? This is another proof that Islam reflects the ideas and the customs of 7th century Arab culture. It is really interesting. The carnal concept of a harem of beautiful women and all the wine you can drink conflicts with spirituality and holiness according to biblical standards. But yet and still, it is the prize that these jihadists and terrorists are believing that as they kill and maim, as they destroy museums and artifacts, and as they come against Jews and Christians wherever they can find them, they are doing it under jihad, which then gives them the highest reward, which is they get virgins and all the wine they can drink in their heaven. Have a nice day. God richly bless you. The outcome of this whole thing is we as Christians have to minister the love of Christ to all those who right now are having trouble with corporations, having trouble with the president, having trouble with the government that has failed them, that there is an option. It's not to turn to violence or to terrorism, but the option is to turn to the Messiah, Jesus the Christ, who not only preached love, but also preached peace, who has given us in the Bible a way out of our anger, our frustration, and our rebellion. May God richly bless you. If you don't know him, my prayer is that you will study and pray and just ask him to show you who is the real God, and you will find that Allah and Jehovah are not the same. They couldn't be. Allah hates the Jews and wants to imprison and put slavery upon Jews and Christians. It just so happens that Jehovah sent his Jewish son to the earth. Islam says that Jesus never died on a cross. The Apostle Paul makes it clear to us. If he didn't die on a cross and take away our sin, then we all are lost. May God richly bless you.